Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Yanina Dore, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great week so far and you have something tasty in the fridge, or in fact you have a glass of wine in hand right now. And if so, well done, you're ahead of the game. Today's episode, I'm quite excited, is going to be about biodynamics, organics and sustainable wine. I've got a great guest. He is the founder of Feel Good Grapes. Now, this is an online wine shop all about these three categories of wine. And basically, you buy a bottle and he plants a tree. If that's not helping the planet, I don't know what is. So we're going to meet him a little bit later on. So my winery of the week is Ancre Estates, which is in Wales. Now, obviously, we always talk about the exciting, amazing wines coming out of England, but let's not forget that Wales is making amazing wines too. And Ancre Estates is a winery you'll find in Monmouthshire in Wales. They have 12 hectares, they're family owned, and they're biodynamic and they are organic. They take eco very seriously here. Even their winery, the walls are made of straw bales and the roof is living. There's ecological pools so that they can save water, and everything here is made, it's minimal intervention. So they've got the standard wines. You can find some sparkling wines, traditional method, your Blanc de Noir and your Blanc de Blanc, and you'll also find a rosé. They do some still wines, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, all very comfortable. And then they get a little bit crazy. They have a range, two wines in the range called Sous Genesis. I've probably pronounced that wrong. Basically, if you look up what Sous Genesis means, it means it is incomparable to anything else because there is nothing else quite like it. And you will find an orange Albarino, yes, that's correct, an Albarino which is famous from the Rías Baixas region in the northern part of Spain, and they left it on the skins to make it orange. And then they have a pet nat, and I am going to taste the pet nat now. So on a request from one of my regulars, Mark Drendel, shout out to you, he has complained and perhaps just suggested that after the last two episodes I have not been tasting any wine, and he has been missing the sound of the wine pouring and my tasting note. So are you ready for this, Mark? Hopefully you're going to hear the pouring. Oh, it's just so satisfying. Oh, can you hear the fizz? So, this is a pet nat, which means Petillant Natural. This is a sparkling wine that is basically made in the méthode ancestrale way. So it's just a naturally made sparkling wine. Now, they're using the grape variety Triomphe, or also known as Triomphe d'Alsace. That gives you a bit of an indication where it comes from. Alsace is where it was made. And I say made, if you listen to the episode before on the Dutch wines, I talked a lot about hybrids and how they're made and why people make them. This itself is a hybrid. So they decided to cross Pinot Noir with Gouache Blanc. And once they had that, they crossed this creation with an unknown American variety. So we don't know fully the history here, but you get Triomphe, which is an early ripening grape variety. This is a red grape variety, and the wine that I'm holding now is a red sparkling. If you don't know how pet nat is made, I'm going to talk about that at the end of the show. But for now, let's talk about the tasting. So it's really fruit driven. I get this kind of strawberry jam notes. It's really quite intense. There is something quite savoury still, like actually some tomatoes. If you actually went into a greenhouse, got that kind of herbaceous note to it. A little bit of baked plums as well, like darker black plums mixing with those red fruits. And it's frothy and it's cloudy. This is an unfiltered wine. So, I mean, tasting wise, oh, it's lovely and refreshing. I have chilled this down. And actually, if anyone wants to know what Lambrusco is like, which is a sparkling wine from Italy, this actually is similar to it. It's obviously got these red berries, but there's something a little bit savoury and a little bit herbal. It's like sour red cherries with these kind of crushed leaves and and kind of bramble. It's very sour on the finish. And kind of finishes with this like olive tapenade to it. This kind of, it's not funky. Actually, it's quite a clean wine considering this is made very naturally. And really, it can probably bottle to bottle will be slightly different. That is the joy of natural wines. But I have to say, it's not that funky, but it does have that tart spritz. Lovely acidity, some decent bubbles in there. I think people have said that this is quite good with barbecue. I can understand that. Ideally, this is an amazing aperitif. Whilst you're waiting for your barbecue meat to cook, drink it. It'd be perfect. This is a great summer wine. Otherwise, kind of salami would be really, really good. Nice cold meats. Or even a pizza with salami and some olives. Boom. That's the perfect pairing right there. So anyone who's after this wine, you can get it for about $13.99 on the Feel Good Grapes website. And try and get it as soon as possible because it's Welsh Wine Week soon. So the 27th of July to the 2nd of August. So look out on social media and all the hashtags. There'll be lots of Welsh wineries educating you and inviting you into their winery. So something to look forward to. So let's talk about organic wine first, as I think that's the simplest. Effectively, it is a wine that the grapes have not received any pesticides or fertilizers, so they don't have chemicals. Nice and simple. However, actually, I don't know if anybody has noticed, now this is more relevant for the wines in America, the difference between seeing an organic wine, one that's certified, and it says this on the label, compared to one that says made with organic grapes. Now, if anybody has wondered the difference, if it's made with organic grapes, they can actually add sulfur into the wine when they're producing it. Now, sulfur is not as bad as everybody thinks. Too much sulfur, of course, is not great, but there's actually no link to having sulfur and you having a headache the next day. Sorry, guys. If you have a headache, it may be because you drank the whole bottle. Anyway, obviously, the less sulfur, the better. You also need to keep in mind that if you're going to make a delicious wine and it's all been made organically and no chemicals, but yet you can't preserve it, because that's what sulfur is. It's a preservative. If you can't preserve it and then it just goes all funky and effectively gone off in the bottle, then what was the point? So there is a reason why sulfur actually can be a good thing. And so just so you know, if it's made from organic grapes, that means that they've added in a little bit of sulfur. Actually, in Europe, we don't have that rule. Effectively, you can have an organic wine certified. And if anybody wants to be wine geeky here, red wine can have up to 100 parts per million. So it's kind of milligrams per litre of sulfur in the red wine. White wine and rosé can have 150 parts per million, a little bit higher because there's generally a bit more acidity. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea about organic wines. Nice and simple. Biodynamic. Oy. Now, this is a much more of a holistic approach. This is all about creating a mini ecosystem in your vineyard, and basically your planting actions go along with the lunar cycle. So there is a lot of faith in this method as opposed to sheer science. Now, taking this holistic approach, people who get certified, first of all, can be certified by Demeter or Biodivin. Now, in terms of when you plant, you're going to find that there are 4 days in the biodynamic calendar. These 4 days are root days, flower days, fruit days, and leaf days. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever gone to a wine tasting before and had somebody say, "Oh, the wine doesn't taste that great. Ugh, it must be a root day." So there is a thing behind this. Very often people, when they feel like the wine is fruitier, they look it up on the calendar and it's a fruit day. And of course, the opposite if the wines aren't showing so well. Again, do you believe in this? That is up to you. Now, in theory, to understand those 4 days, this is when you plant or when you harvest. So fruit days are for harvesting. Leaf days are actually for watering. Root days are for pruning. And flower days, leave it alone. Stay in your kitchen and have a nice glass of wine. So that is what the farmers will do in the vineyards based on this calendar. Now, biodynamics actually started in the 1920s with an Austrian guy. His name was Dr. Rudolf Steiner. He was a scientist and a bit of a philosopher. And basically, he was giving these talks in the 1920s to farmers about how to integrate the science with nature in a better way. And this has been, catapulted and continued until today. I personally think that nature works in a way that we cannot even fathom. There are energies in the universe. There are things that science cannot explain yet. And one thing, it's definitely a leap of faith having to go to biodynamics. But if you speak to biodynamic farmers and viticulturalists, they will say to you that the results prove that it is better. Anyway, this is an ongoing argument, and who knows when we'll get to the conclusion. Now, some of you might have heard about this cow horn thing. Now, I'm not going to explain what the cow horn is because Mike explains it later on in our interview. But for the wine geeks out there, this is called Preparation 500. And Preparation 500 is literally the most famous and probably the most important preparation that people do in biodynamic farming. So watch out for that, and we're going to talk about it later. Then there are other compost preparations. So they use lots of chamomile, lots of stinging nettles, yarrow, these kind of herbs, and that is how you look after the land and the soils. So then we get to sustainability. So this leads me to the interview with Mike, where we touch on this a little bit more, and you can get to know what's happening in his wine shop and how we got into the world of wine. So, everybody listening, I want to introduce you to my wonderful guest. I say wonderful, I'm not sure yet. We'll see how he behaves. Mike Turner, hello.
Hello, everybody.
I
have promised to behave.
We shall see. Now, I want to ask you something before we get started. And the question is going to be how the hell you got into wine. Because I've done my investigations. I've done my stalky bits. You did a degree in maths and statistics. You did a master's in finance investment, spent I don't know how many years doing investment banking. So how the hell did you get into wine?
To be honest, wine's probably the only thing that's made sense in that whole list, really, isn't it? No, it was, I don't know. I suppose when I was a kid, I was just good at maths. Hello, girls. There you go. That's the sexiest thing I'm going to say today.
Absolutely. No, we find that, someone who can count up their bottles of wine, it's very attractive.
Well, there is that, yeah, indeed. And then, no, I did banking for just because it's one of them jobs you kind of fall into and that sounded a bit weird, but...
after a bachelor's degree and a master's.
I was basically just trying to get a graduate job at the time because that's what you do, innit? You go to uni, you do that, you do that, you do that, you do that, and then you get a graduate job, and then that's it, that you're off. And I did that for about 9 years, hated it. And in the meantime, my mum and dad bought this sort of rundown old farmhouse in northern Italy.
Now it gets romantic. Set the scene, please.
It gets very romantic indeed, yeah. So, the thing is, in Italy, there's this really... Well, it's the same, I think, in France as well. It's like when people pop their clogs, they tend to leave their houses to 13 cousins. You know, so basically you drive around these places and there's all these falling down old farmhouses everywhere because no bugger decides to sell them. So I don't know how it happened, but mum and dad just went away for holiday and came back, said they bought a house, and it was like, we're not that family, trust me, we're really not. So it was a bit of a shock to the system, that. But then basically all of our mates who we have in that area are all winemakers because we're right in the middle of Barbera Moscato country.
Okay.
And so we're like sort of 20 minutes from Asti, about 25 minutes from Alba. So it's that kind of area. And this was at the time I was at university still. So I was doing my undergrad. So I was very much a snakebite and black aficionado at the time, as I think you're meant to call yourself if you're into snakebite and black. Yeah, I tried the snakebite and black about 5 years ago for the last time in my life. And it's truly awful. But there you go. Got me through uni. But yeah, and then I just discovered all these kind of wines, and just I think more than anything else, it wasn't like this eureka moment with a glass. I was stood in this vineyard, and listeners, I hope you all know this if you've been out traveling and stuff like that, but vineyards are nearly always beautiful areas of the world. Oh, well, one or two exceptions are there, but I just stood there on the side of this hill in Piemonte looking out going, this is so much better than an office. But also, winemakers are just fun people most of the time as well. Again, we'll not talk about the exceptions, but But yeah, no, they are. They're mostly just fun, interesting people. So you just sit there having an natter, and no, it just always struck me as something that was a lifestyle decision, I guess, to an extent. I'd be perfectly honest. When I was a kid, I thought, oh God, wouldn't it be nice to be rich and all this, and that's why I went into banking. I'd be completely honest with you. So yeah, I just thought, sorry, you got to be happy with life, and wine kind of makes me happy, which is good.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I remember being in Barolo, so in Piemonte, and looking down at the slopes of La Mora. And anybody who has not been to the Barolo region, Google it. I completely understand why you fell in love with wine in that moment. It's a special moment.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was brilliant, really good. And then, so that was about what? So I changed about about 5 years ago, something like that.
So you chucked it in. You've then
chucked it in.
You've got your blog, Please Bring Me My Wine, which I rather appreciate the title. And then you've obviously... Are you still part owner of La Ferme restaurant? What's going on with the restaurant? Yeah,
so basically, when I was doing... I started doing like a little bit of importing and trying to do a little bit of retail, and it was a bit of a struggle, and I wasn't really very good at it, and I wasn't, it was a confidence thing, really, I guess. But I was basically started doing all these wine dinners at this place called La Ferme in Farringdon. So that was the first La Ferme. And then I got to know the owner and the head chef. And then this restaurant became available in Primrose Hill, which is close to where I was living at the time. And the chef, Guillaume, who's a very, very talented fella, and he was really looking for a place for himself. So I lost my mind entirely and decided I'd co-invest with him. I have to say, the whole idea was I was going to go in there, I was going to be like, make this amazing wine list, I was like, I loved the kind of like the ethos of all these places like 10 Cases and things like that. I think that, I'd really love that thought process behind a wine list. I think it's great. And I thought, I could do that. Primrose Hill's right for it kind of thing. Well, two things. One, it's not.
Oh, no.
And the other thing, basically, there's a reason rich people have money is because they tend not to spend it. Okay, pretty much. But the other thing being is that because of my sort of background, I ended up doing the accounts for the restaurant. And if you want to be able to sleep at night, don't do accounts for restaurants if you want to be able to sleep at night. Because I was like, I get pissy when I owe someone a $5. I get nervous. So when all of a sudden, like, you're dealing with all these suppliers and they're like, where's our money? You're like, I don't know where it is,
So this wasn't as romantic as you had planned.
No, it wasn't. But I tell you what, Guillaume and Francois, my partners at the restaurant, have worked their asses off, and they're still going all the way through COVID. We're still going. We're starting to break even, which is amazing. Well, look, as I said, massive credit to Guillaume and Francois, and then also my wife's been amazing.
Your counting. Don't forget about your counting skills.
Well, no, to finish off the story, I've actually palmed that off about 6 months ago onto my wife, who
bless her. Okay,
does an amazing job of that now.
So she deserves.
Well, she's very good at telling people where to go, basically, which is kind of what you need in that environment. But there you go.
Fab. So she.
But no, it's still going, so it's great.
She'll survive another year of marriage then, while she's still counting strong.
I think that might be the other way around, but fair enough. Yeah, I'll take that.
She's not here. Just pretend. Big yourself up. So you're doing that, and then the most exciting thing, which is, well, for me, which is why I wanted to talk to you, is you've now set up. Well, you tell us about this online wine shop and the ethos behind it, because I just think it is really important what you're doing. So tell me.
Okay, so I have co-founded a online wine retailer called Feel Good Grapes with a guy called Toby Flood, who some people may remember he's going to hate me saying may remember. So he was played, he's got about 50, 60 caps for England rugby. And he's still up there. He's still up there playing for Newcastle Falcons at the minute, so they're just about to get back into the Premiership again next season. COVID
really,
dependent and all that.
Unfortunately, not into my
well, we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's not the easiest. It's not the easiest sport to play if you're social distancing. So I think they might have to wait a little bit. Okay. But yeah,
so get a little bit sweaty,
Toby, it's a bit sweaty, bit close. So there we go.
Little cuddles.
Yeah, it's nice cuddles in the mud. I mean, and they wear shorts. You go figure. But no, Toby actually had a time. He spent 4 years playing out in France for Toulouse. And all of a sudden he started getting the idea of this sort of, I'm not going to say he was a pisshead, right? He really, really wasn't. But the point being is he was out in the areas and spending his weekends in places like Fitou and Corbière and being able to experience everywhere from sort of like anywhere around that region of sort of, absolutely. You know, I mean, going pretty much from Bordeaux all the way across to Savoy, you know, and you know, you got to experience that, not just the wine, but the wine culture. Yeah, as we've said, you know, it's like, it's what got me into it, and it's clearly what's got into it. And when we decided to do something, it was, you know, you can be another wine online retailer that really wants to support organic, biodynamics, natural winemakers, sustainability. Sustainability, we might end up having to talk about that a little bit, because obviously that is a slightly weird term that we all use, and
what is
not
it?
really quite sure why.
What do you think is happening in the wine industry then specifically? And like when you're making your choices about what wines you're going to purchase, what are you looking for? What are you explaining to customers is the sustainability that's happening in the wine industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything usually boils down to the ethos of winemakers and the people producing it. And, you know, I think there's, what do we call it, like 4 pillars or whatever they call it, of sustainability.
Yeah.
And whether it be sustainability in the vineyards, economic sustainability is quite a big one. There's a guy called James Milton who's like the godfather of New Zealand biodynamics, and he said this thing, I don't know whether it's his line or whatever, but he said you can't be green if you're always in the red.
No,
and
that's
I think,
a
you know,
really
like
valid
the whole,
point.
like,
People forget about that.
They do, and I think, you know, like now when we're trying to do this business, you know, like we've made a pledge that all our packaging's 100% recyclable and biodegradable. I mean, all the way through to the documents enclosed wallets, you know, and it costs money to do that. The packaging isn't cheap, but it shouldn't be cheap. We shouldn't, you know, we've had the 70s and 80s race to the bottom in terms of pricing, and this is what people think it costs and blah blah blah. And hey, look, you know, we're not gonna change people's opinions overnight. That's not what we're gonna do. But I think any of us can do, and I'm not trying to be holier than thou, and it's really hard not to sound it, but you just think, you know, you just got to do what you can do and what matters to you. And I think the wine producers, I like to be able to sit in a room with them, and if I can't sit in a room with them, at least sit on a Zoom with them and try and get a feel for what really makes them tick. And if I appreciate what they're trying to do, then yeah, sorry, I'll support it. Yeah, we'll stick it on the. Yeah, it gets the tick, and then yeah, from there.
Well, you've mentioned mentioned your 2 pillars. So the other 2, would I be right? Because for me, obviously, when I talk about wineries, I'm looking at actually what they're doing sustainably inside the winery, and then also in terms of social responsibility. So it's actually how they're treating their staff, the community, the people around them. So would that be your final pillars?
Yeah, exactly that. So within the winery, obviously that also incorporates, you know, it's everything from where do you get your energy from, how do you recycle your water supply, blah blah, all this kind of stuff. And then the community one, I think, is one that everybody forgets about. And when you're looking at places like, for example, Chile, Argentina, South Africa's a big one, because obviously South Africa's a country that's been changing in front of all our eyes since in our lifetimes, right? Absolutely. And so the idea of community in South Africa has meant different things over the past 10 to 20 years, I think. I mean, look, you know, I'm talking about this as somebody from Liverpool, you know what I mean? It's like...
but we know there's been many struggles.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in the mouths of South Africans or anything, but, you know, it has been a changing thing. So if you've got people who are looking to pay, I mean, it's really basic things. I mean, you can start off with a really basic thing of making sure people are paid a fair wage, you know, and that hasn't always been the case. I'm suggesting around the world that hasn't always been the case. Because you have a lot of, as you know, harvest time, you get a lot of kind of temporary workers come in all the way through. You need people out in the vineyards, you know. They don't always get paid a fair wage, and so it's making sure that your staff are looked after. You know, there's lots of great sort of wineries out there who are, you know, helping to build schools, helping to build local town, or investing in their local towns. There's a brilliant guy. This is Derek Mossman Knapp. I don't know whether he uses it double barreled or not. But
Derek in Chile.
That's him. The Garage Wine Company.
Absolutely,
and
love Derek.
Not only are they incredible wines, they really are, but the fact is he's bringing not just on his own, of course, not just on his own, but, you know, through his ethos and the ethos of people around him, he's basically making sure that the small community he's part of has got a future. And I mean, if we're going to talk about sustainable just means, to me it's like, are you still going to be here in 100 years time? And, you know, and as I said, Go on.
No, I was going to say, but actually then that also ticks into being more organic and biodynamic, which is, I suppose, the other filters when you're choosing your wines, right, for the wine shop, which is, again, why are people not putting so many chemicals and everything? Because it is damaging the ground. I can't remember, the guy in Burgundy, I think it's Claude, well, my good French, Claude Bourguignon, the guy basically in 1988.
Oh, in the 1980s, yeah, exactly.
And he turns around and he says, I declare all Burgundy vineyards dead. So much chemicals were used on those vineyards that's not sustainable for the future. And I think that's why everyone is now, to some degree, obviously everyone is different, trying to use a lot less, be more natural.
I think that's it. And I mean, look, I'm not going to completely shoe the agrochemical industry because, look, I think what they had to do when that kind of stuff came out, they've had to become so much more savvy, a hell of a lot more R&D going into the products that they're producing. And to an extent now, look, that nobody in the world is using the similar kind of chemicals as they were in the 1980s. That just doesn't, well, maybe one or two, but let's not go into that. But look, I would always say that to me, biodynamics is something that I really, really appreciate. And that's kind of sort of like almost like I suppose you'd describe it as almost like an organics plus lunar cycle thingy altogether. But that's very much almost a lifestyle choice, almost. But it's really like a faith buy-in. It's like it's one of those things where I believe science hasn't caught up to it yet.
Well, it's a much more holistic approach, isn't it? And
absolutely.
Again, people don't. I don't know if. Do you think consumers understand biodynamics? What does biodynamics mean? Is that still something we're far from? I
don't think it's very far from. It's just, I mean, but I think you and I both know, like, wine has always had an issue with consumers understanding anything on a label, to be honest, because no bugger makes it easy for them, do they? So I think once you kind of, and it's on the website, one of the first pages I actually built when I was making a website was eco terms explain. I mean, I hate using words like eco terms. It sounds like so sort of,
No,
yeah,
I think
man, yeah. But what else are you gonna say? I'm trying to think of better ways of saying it, but
no. But I tell you what, though, I love some of the. I was reading about. I think it's Tohu Wines in Marlborough. They use crushed mussel shells so that they don't have to. They can reduce their use of herbicides. And I also was listening to another podcast actually about a producer in Colares, which is the smallest wine region I think in the world, which is actually in Lisbon in Portugal, and they use human hair over the vineyards to stop the rabbits coming in, which I just think, there's so many different interesting, amazing ways to...
If I'm honest, that last example kind of raised more questions than answers, if I'm honest. I was just like, where are they getting that from?
No, apparently from the barbers. From the barbers, they specifically said the barbers.
Fair enough. Okay. No, I mean, I think this is it, and this is why, like, I think when I hear people not criticising, I think, but being very dismissive, and I hear a lot of people being dismissive of biodynamics because, well, there's no scientific proof in any of that kind of thing, and you're just like, look, you've got 6,000-7,000 years of agriculture that used to do it this way, by everything by the lunar cycle, and we're only looking at sort of like the sort of 20th century when that changed, really, and on a mass scale, and I think there's that. If people haven't heard of biodynamics, there's all these things called preparations, and it basically you spray it or use it as a compost or something, and it's all designed to basically boost the vineyard's immunity. So it's kind of like when you take your kids to chickenpox parties or something like that. You almost want to, you basically want the vines to just build up their own immunity, so you don't really have to spray anymore.
Absolutely.
And there's this one thing they do where I know, but just for the benefit of the listeners,
please go
where
on.
They basically stick manure in a cow horn and bury it, right?
I love a bit of cow poo.
Now everybody's like, "What the heck are you doing that for?" Kind of, why would you bury it, kind of thing. But they've spent, a good few research hours, and well, not just hours, but years trying to replicate what the cow horn does, not necessarily the manure, but like how it helps the manure and decomposition, and they cannot replicate what a cow horn does. I'm not suggesting like, oh my god, well that proves it's amazing. I'm just saying that there are certain things we cannot explain, and that at the minute there's certain things we can't replicate natural. And this is why I'm not massively against the idea of agrochemical companies really trying hard to make incredibly minimal impact products. Because there are certain wine regions of the world, let's go for something like the Loire Valley or even Bordeaux at times. It's like, organics is hard. you know, because if you get a crap bit of weather, that's your year gone, you know. And let's not have it, you know. This is why, like, as much as we can be all like, oh yeah, no, everybody should be organic or everybody should be this and things like that, you're like, well, as we say, going back to that, you
need to make some money as well.
That's it. So and this is why, like, we shouldn't bash everybody all the time, but I just think it's about people's ethos overall.
I think it's interesting you just touched on that. The thing is, if people are using more, you know, the lutte à raison, you know, the reasoned struggle or the reasoned fight is what they say in France. And I think the majority of winemakers, that means that they use chemicals only when they have to. The more organic you are, the more biodynamic you are, it seems that the more the ecosystem, the vineyards respond. And then in theory, sprinkling a little bit of chemicals here and there when necessary, you're going to be doing it a lot less anyway, and the vineyards will be stronger and better able to adapt, and it just goes round in a circle, I think, really.
I'd fully agree, and I think that there are still people out there making wine in what we call the conventional way, right? And that does happen. So the idea for me of, like, people making organic producers and biodynamic producers and sustainable producers or whatever all having an argument about who's better, it's just the most ridiculous thing, because you think, guys, everybody here is, for whatever way they're doing, everybody's trying to move in the right direction. So let's all just not have a go. Let's all just move in the right direction and basically pull up everybody who hasn't started yet. And as you said, most people are now a hell of a lot more conscious about this, you know. I mean, look, you know, there are, of course, the big brands, the sort of £5 bottles of wine on the shelf. I mean, that is
they're not going to. They are not going to be organic, that's sustainable, and they're not going to be using biodynamic.
No, I mean, effectively, I don't know whether anybody watched this. There's a program a few years ago called Hugh's Chicken Run, where he did this expose of, like, Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall did this thing where he said, look, you used to be able to buy 2 chickens for £5 at big supermarkets or whatever. Well, you know, yeah. And so he basically did this expose of, like, well, this is how you can do it. And so he showed people around intensive chicken farms and blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God. It's like people were coming out, you know, being sick out of these places. And I'm not suggesting it's that, but I remember actually having a chat with probably over a glass or something, knowing him, but with this guy, with Oz Clark, and sort of saying, dude, man, like, you've got to do a TV show like this and go and sort of stand there in these vineyards and go and show what the real price of a £5 bottle of wine is.
People would be shocked.
It's, you know,
a couple of pence.
Well, I think so. And you know, the desertification that's the word, isn't it? I stopped geography when I was 14, so I'm just going for that. But but you know what I mean. The desertification, is that what you call it? But basically, I mean, we're talking hundreds of square kilometres of areas of Australia. I mean, obviously Australia has its issues with its view on climate change, the government in Australia anyway, but some of the bigger brand wineries, you know, they're responsible for hundreds of square kilometres of desertification, you know, and because they're sticking vines in places vines should not be, and they're rerouting water to places water should not be, and all this kind of stuff, you know. And it's and I think that's, you know, like, I get it from the big brand point of view, because that's just what they have to do, because I mean, look, I've never been a supermarket buyer, and I don't think you have either. You know, I mean, everybody's under pressure to make an extra sort of 5p out of a bottle, you know. I mean, that's how low margins are at that point. So, and until people stop buying it, then nobody's going to stop doing it.
No, this is true. But the nice thing is, anyway, for anybody who does not want to spend £5 on what's not really wine, and they want to have wine now that they know the people are treated better, the vines are, you know, better, there's less pesticides, which means it's going to be healthier for them anyway. They can come to you, feelgoodgrapes.co.uk. Is that the website? .com.
Yeah, okay. Just really quick to say, we're really lucky, I think, right now, because we live in an age where people are a lot more aware and actually want to know more. You know, even 20 years ago, this wasn't the case. So now we're very, very lucky. And so there are plenty of producers for me to choose from nowadays, which is amazing, because, you know, everybody is really starting to pull their socks up as an industry, you know, I mean, it's an agricultural industry. We have to do it. So, and it's brilliant. It's great. So I get some lovely wines that I get to choose from. And then obviously with all the options, the add-ons, and we plant this again sounds a bit twee, but it's just something we really wanted to do. We plant a tree for every bottle of wine we sell.
Yes, I can't believe I didn't even mention that. I'm glad you did that.
I've just remembered that exactly.
Just something really important. We drink wine, you plant trees, and we save the world together. Yeah. This is super exciting.
Well, that's it.
No, it is.
I mean, every bottle has a carbon footprint, and that just is what it is. Until I'm more than up for it at some point. I'd love to be able to sell a decent range of wine in cans. I'd love to, but at the minute it's not easy because just the way.
What about bag in box? Because I was drinking Le Grappin, the range that they do some Burgundy wines and some Rhone Valley wines, and their bag in box options are actually very, very good. So I think bag in box is actually really getting there in terms of quality. Is that something, if you find the right producer, you might get some?
Absolutely. I mean, they are doing it slightly differently. I think from what I remember, they did a lot of refillable bags. Was that what you were having? Or was it more bag in box? But I remember when they used to come to a lot of farmers markets around London and do refillable bags, and I thought that's a good idea. I like that one. The issue with the bag in box, and actually there's this is proper one for wine geeks. All right, you ready for this, people?
We're ready.
Smurfit Kappa, the packaging company, have just done a rather large research piece on bag-in-box, people's attitudes towards it, the recyclability of them and things like that. Look, they're fantastic. There are always parts like, the actual plastic tap and things like that actually aren't recyclable at the minute. I think again, it's just opening people up to different packaging options. I think bag-in-box is brilliant. For like if you're gonna have like a party or whatever, you got like about 5 or 6 mates together, or obviously not right now, socially distanced and all that lot. But if you got people around, it's a great option as long as you look. Let's be honest, deep down, as long as it's got good wine in it, it's a great option. And this Le Grappin is great wine, right? So bloody right it is. I mean, look, go on.
No. I was going to say, tell me, you've got amazing wines on your website. I've already had a look. I've seen some fantastic producers on there that I'm super excited about. You got a favourite? Is there a favourite on there or something that you're really enjoying drinking? Just, so people can maybe go straight to that if they want to go on the website. What's the fave?
Do you know what? My absolute favourite, and there's this, as with everything when it comes to wines, I think wine and food there's a story behind it, and it's about the memory it has for you, right?
Okay.
And the one on that website is the Casa di Bianca Moscato d'Asti from Gianni Dolia.
Piemonte again. Okay.
That's it. And Gianni, so this was 2001 when I first went out there, and Gianni was like one of the first wine producers I met. And he basically introduced me to Moscato. I'd never had it before,
Moscato is perfect for summer for anyone. It's soft, it's got a little fruitiness and a fizz. It's about 5% alcohol, so you can drink a whole load of it. Peaches, carry on.
It's amazing. No, but basically, nobody bloody drinks it over here because... I think everybody's got long memories of really bad Asti Spumante in the 80s and 90s and whatever.
I think people don't understand what Moscato d'Asti is. I think actually, and that's something that we need to get that out there more, because it's a fantastic drink.
But that's his single vineyard selection, Moscato d'Asti. It's like, it's immense. It's absolutely immense. But I love. But that's a great one. It was a bit niche though. But I think the Tendu range from Steve Mathiasson. I keep calling him Robert. I don't know why I do that, but there you go. It's Steve Mathiasson.
Wines. I mean, anybody who thinks that Napa Valley and California is all about just Cabernet Sauvignon, I love the Mathiasson wines. They've got. I know you've got the Cortese, which is a Piemonte.
Yeah, that wasn't deliberate. I just like the wine, honestly. I swear, And then we got their red blend as well, which is actually also with their red blend. I mean, he wanted to do, what did he say? He said he wanted to do a Beaujolais style wine using Italian varietals in California. I thought, why not, mate? Go for it.
I love it.
He's smashed it. He's done great,
Refosco grape variety. They do Ribolla Gialla. So they love their Italian grape varieties, that's for sure.
They do. It's amazing. And again, like when you go to sort of sustainable, when you look at the sort of sustainable message in that, it's just little things that he does well. well, it's things like, I think they use the most lightweight commercial bottles available. So they're ridiculous light lift that you're just like, oh my God, it's like half the weight of a normal bottle of wine. It's crazy, you know.
So you have to
really
drink
good,
two,
you know?
just to make it feel normal, yeah?
Just to check, yeah, exactly. Well, otherwise you don't get the exercise in your arm, do you?
Yeah, that's very, very important.
You know?
That's advice for everyone to know. Buy 2 bottles of the Matthias and Cortese or the red blend. Do it. I also love, you've got some great English wines as well. I love, you've got the 40 Hall Vineyards, which actually I found out recently, Will Davenport is the winemaker who makes obviously the Davenport organic wines. They've got a great winemaker, and it's London Vineyards. Actually, London Vineyards. I googled them. They're up in Enfield. So that's for British people who are feeling a bit authentic. That's
I have to say that meant quite a lot to me, that one, because like I was a bit sort of not disingenuous, but I'm left out quite a big part of why I left banking. So basically, I developed pretty bad anxiety condition and led into depression. 40 Hall is also a social project.
Yes,
and what they do
work
is
with the community, don't they?
They do, and it's all about ecotherapy for people that are really struggling with confidence, struggling with their mental health.
Something very personal.
It's I just like, you know, I almost cried reading the thing, you know, because I think, again, I left what, 2013, 2014, so we're not that long ago, and none of this stuff, as far as I was aware, none of this stuff existed. I had to leave banking on. I mean, I know they did exist at the time, but I didn't know about it, obviously, and I felt at the time in 2013 I still couldn't talk to people about it. I basically lied to my colleagues at the time as to why I was leaving.
Now that's actually something that I think we're so, the world has opened up so much more. Mental health is a thing that we can talk about, that people can actually speak of without shame. And they say the Drinks Trust, our amazing hospitality charity that we have in the UK, have done stunning things, especially during COVID. They've been amazing. But even before that, 1 in 4 of us is struggling with something pretty big. And you just realise, hang on a minute, that means that most of my friends and my family have something right now that needs to be discussed. And I just, these kind of projects and community things that allow us to talk openly and get the help. Fantastic. So everyone, can we drink some 40 Hall Vineyards?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you know, well, they do. I mean, look, like with all English vineyards and Welsh vineyards, I'd like to point out, they make look, we got a great climate for the sparkling wine, and everybody sort of knows that terroir is really good for that. The soils are great for it and things like that. But Bacchus, and I know a mate of ours, Joe Wadsack, does the Drinks Coach on YouTube. Okay. And he did like a 10-minute video on Bacchus as a grape, and really underrated grape. You know, people don't really buy it because they might not have heard of it when they see it on the shelf or whatever, but get stuck into that. I mean, English and Welsh Bacchus is very, very good these days.
Heard it here first, people. Thank you so much, Mike. I'm done with you now, as I promised. I'm telling you to go. No. As promised, all right,
understood, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. See ya. Okay.
It's been great chatting. I hope the business is really well, because I just really like the authenticity of it. I love that you're planting trees. I love that all the packaging you're doing is recyclable, and people can just go to your website and buy a wine that the winemaker has looked after. It's, you know, somebody in the society has done something great, and they can feel good about what they're drinking. So well done you for putting this together.
Look, thanks so much for having me on, and Jason, sorry about a few of the swearing bits. Sorry about that. I do try not to do that. Yeah. All right.
But next time, sort it out. No, thank you so much,
will do.
Mike.
Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, take care, guys. Take care. Ta-ra.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am definitely in the mood now for a Moscato d'Asti. So Moscato d'Asti, we touched on it very, very slightly. I'm going to go into detail about what that delicious, amazing kind of fizzy drink is. There are 2 different types of Asti products, Asti Spumante and then Moscato d'Asti. And the difference between the 2, they're made in the same way, but Asti Spumante will always have more bubbles, it's fully sparkling, and generally is slightly less sweet, and it will be slightly higher alcohol, maybe around the 9% ABV range. Moscato d'Asti is about 5.5%, roughly, ABV. It is pretty sweet, and we're talking just a little bit of fizz. Now, if you've ever wondered how it's made, this is very different to the Charmat method, which is how they make Prosecco in a tank, the tank method. It's very different to how they make the traditional method, how they make it in Champagne or English sparkling wine or many places around the world, Cava, Cremant. This is the only sparkling wine method that doesn't start already with a still wine that has been made. So it doesn't go through a second fermentation. What happens is they take the must, so they take the grapes and they leave the grapes almost at freezing point until they're ready for the wine. Then, when they're ready to make the Asti Spumante or the Moscato d'Asti, they warm up the must. They start fermentation in a pressurized tank, and a byproduct of fermentation is carbon dioxide. So at a certain point, depending on which one of the products they're making, they will then trap this carbon dioxide inside the tank, and they will stop the fermentation by chilling it down, and then you can choose if you're going to have the sweetness or how much bubbles, and that's generally how the two are made. Now, Moscato d'Asti is just gorgeous. We are talking, it's fruity, it's floral, think peaches, apricots, it's a little bit musky, some orange blossom, and of course, not very high in alcohol, so you can drink a hell of a lot of it. It's very normal to actually get Moscato d'Asti in half bottles as well, so 375 millilitres. Perfect pairings would be really fruity dishes and very nutty desserts. So fruit tarts, peach, apricot tarts are obviously perfect. Also, you know the almond Italian biscuits? They're amazing. Don't pair this with chocolate. Something like that is going to be far too rich because this is a really light, fresh, fruity dessert wine, basically. Another pairing, it goes quite well with cheese, especially if you're having nuts and fruit and gorgonzola, a creamy, soft gorgonzola. This will be where the opposites, kind of the sweet and sour, come together, so you can really play around with that. After talking about how Moscato d'Asti and the Asti method are made into sparkling wines, as I mentioned right at the beginning of the podcast, when I was tasting the Pet Nat, this is made in effectively the méthode ancestrale. This is the most natural and the oldest way to make a sparkling wine. So basically what you do is you take the grapes when they're still fermenting, you put them in a bottle, you add on basically a crown cap so that the CO2 that is produced as a byproduct cannot escape, and that's how you get your bubbles. You're not going to have as much pressure inside the bottle as a champagne, the traditional method, because there's not as much time for those bubbles to be created because, half the fermentation has already happened before they put it in the bottle. What you will get, which is different, is a cloudiness to the wine because there is no filtration, no fining. This is a much more kind of rustic style, and also at the same time there's no added sugar, so generally you're going to get a drier wine. This is also the same in Prosecco when you see the label Col Fondo. That's a method ancestrale. So if anyone is wondering what Pet Nat is or what Col Fondo is, now you know. So to finish off, after talking about the health of the vines and what preparations to put onto the soil, I thought I'd finish with a nice wine quote which looks at us as human beings. Now, Alexandra Fleming, who was the microbiologist who invented penicillin, said a really nice little wine quote, which is, "Penicillin cures, but wine makes people happy." Something to always keep in mind. So cheers to you all, guys. May you all have a lovely week. And may I ask you, if you haven't already done it, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to this podcast on whichever podcast app you're listening to. Please leave me your comments, leave me your reviews. What do you want to listen to? And of course, share this with the wine lovers that you know. Until next time, bye.